What's up guys, my name's Brandon and the 2020 iPad Pro is here, and while not much has changed, we did get a minor bump in both the CPU and the GPU performance. So in this video, I want to test and see if that improved performance is just minor or if there is actually a noticeable difference in day-to-day usage compared to the previous gen 2018 iPad Pro. So we are going to be doing our typical test that we always do here on the channel, the app launching test, the video exporting test, web browsing test, things like that. But the main focus in this video is going to be on gaming, because let's be real, this is likely going to be the only area where there could be a big improvement between these two. But of course, we shall see. I may be just as surprised as you guys throughout this video. So let's go ahead and just go over the specs and then get started with the speed and gaming test. So we have the 2018 iPad Pro here on the left, and this has the A12X chip and 4 gigabytes of RAM. And then over here on the right, we have the 2020 iPad Pro, which has the A12Z Bionic chip and 6 gigabytes of RAM. So in the 2018 iPad Pro, all models had 4 gigabytes except for the 1 terabyte model, which had 6 gigabytes of RAM. But now in 2020, all variants of the iPad Pro come with 6 gigabytes of RAM. So we do have more RAM on this guy, and we will be testing out the RAM management to see if it actually makes a difference. These are also both the 12.9-inch models. Both have all applications closed. Both are on the same iPadOS 13.4, and both are around the same battery level. So before we get into Fortnite at 120 FPS, Call of Duty Mobile, and some other games, let's kick off this test with some good old PUBG. So we're gonna try to open this up at the same time. That's not the point of this test. We're actually gonna be testing out the actual gaming experience, but I do also wanna see which one gets to the actual front page first. And it looks like the 2020 iPad Pro is a little bit ahead, but I don't know, we'll see. So no, the 2018 iPad Pro actually got to this main screen first, which is pretty interesting. So now let's go ahead and test out the actual gaming performance and see if there's any difference. So as you can see, we are logged into 2 separate accounts. We're gonna go to our settings here and make sure the graphics are the same on both. So graphics right here, we are on HDR, Ultra. We're gonna do this as realistic. We're gonna enable anti-aliasing and shadows. All right, so there we go. We have the exact same settings on both iPads. Let's go ahead and jump into a game. So just jumping out of the airplane, I don't really see a big difference between these two. We'll pull up our parachute and see if we see any kind of difference at all. So the graphics performance seems about the same, at least so far. I don't really see any kind of frame rate drops or any kind of lagginess on either side. If anything, the graphics look a little bit better on the 2020 iPad Pro, but that could just be placebo. The sky looks a little bit different. That could also be the positioning on the map, and the grass looks a little bit different as well. I want you guys to tell me what you think though. Are either one, is one smoother than the other? I want you guys to have your input on here as well. I'm gonna go ahead and try to find a building to loot and get a gun so you guys can see how it is in combat. So you can see me trying to multitask and play both games at the same time here with PUBG, and it was a little bit difficult, but I couldn't really tell a difference in the graphics performance between the 2018 iPad Pro and the 2020 iPad Pro. Both handle this extremely well in HDR settings, and I didn't really have any hitches or any kind of lag or anything, no frame drops, anything on either device that I saw. But let me know if you guys saw something different than me, but we're gonna go ahead and move on to Fortnite at 120 FPS. All right, so now we are launching Fortnite. Again, we are logged in to 2 different accounts. We pressed them both at the same time. It looked like the 2020 iPad Pro loaded up Fortnite quicker, whereas the 2018 iPad Pro loaded up PUBG quicker, which is kind of interesting. All right, so checking in on the settings here on both devices, you can see settings. Let's go to our display right here. You can see 120 FPS, and of course that does set us to medium quality graphics. I will also run this in Epic settings to see if there's any difference, but for now, we're just gonna stick to 120 FPS on medium. It's the same on both. And we're gonna go ahead and join a Team Rumble at the same time in 3, 2, 1. And also I will be using finger controls at first, but I will also use a controller on both iPads as well, just to give you guys a little bit more advanced gameplay and more movement in the gameplay as well. So did you guys see that? We just had a little bit of a lag here for some reason on the 2018 iPad Pro. It went to the loading screen, whereas the 2020 iPad Pro did not. And we're in the same lobby, so I know that it was only for the 2018 iPad Pro and had nothing to do with the connection. So pretty interesting there. And all right, so since we're in the same game, we can jump at the same time. So as you can see here, we are jumping at the same time. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the parachute at the same time as well. Actually, let's go down a little bit, just like so. Let me know if you guys see a difference in graphics on either one of these devices. We should see a little bit of lag somewhere because 120 FPS, of course, is a lot to maintain throughout the entirety of the game. All right, so we're just gonna auto run towards the circle right now to see if there's any difference in just the running, and then we will get into shooting and things like that as well. All right, so I just hooked up my PS4 controller to the 2020 iPad Pro. We're gonna try to get some gameplay, some loot, and kill some people, and then we're gonna compare it to the 2018 iPad Pro using the controller as well. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and swap the controller over to the 2018 iPad Pro right here. So you can see some lag here on the 2018 iPad Pro, definitely some frame rate lag there. We did not have that at all on the 2020 iPad Pro. We have a lot more action going on over here as well. And you don't see any frames dropping or any type of lag. There's explosions and everything. So definitely looks like there's better performance on the 2020 iPad Pro when it comes to Fortnite at 120 FPS. So like I said, you could definitely see some frames dropping on the 2018 iPad Pro, whereas the 2020 iPad Pro runs at 120 FPS super smoothly. So we're gonna go ahead and change the display settings. We're gonna change it to Epic now. We are going to be playing in 30 FPS, but we are going to change this to Epic. So just dropping down, take a look at the legs here. It looks a lot more smooth on the 2020 iPad Pro compared to the 2018 iPad Pro. And you can see it's not lagging, but it just looks a little bit more choppy on the 2018 iPad Pro, whereas it looks more smooth here on the new model. All right, so once again, we're going to use the controller on the 2018 iPad Pro first. You can see they're just not super smooth for some reason. So we're going to compare that to the 2020 iPad Pro here in a second, but take a look and remember the gameplay on the left-hand side first. So now we're going to swap over to the 2020 iPad Pro with the controller, and just instantly switching over to the 2020 iPad Pro on these epic settings, I can tell a difference in the graphics performance on this new machine here. Definitely a difference, because with the 2018 iPad Pro, even when you're just running, especially when you're running, when you have your materials out like this, you would notice frames dropping almost every time you took a step. It just seemed a lot slower and a lot more choppy than the 2020 iPad Pro. The 2020 just feels super smooth when you're running and fighting, and just everything feels a lot better and more realistic, more console-like, I should say. All right, so I think we've seen enough Fortnite now. So I definitely think that the 2020 iPad Pro outperforms the 2018 iPad Pro when it comes to gaming and Fortnite on both settings, the epic settings and also the 120 FPS medium settings. The 2020 iPad Pro just felt a lot smoother, whereas the 2018 iPad Pro just had some choppiness, some frame drops, and just overall, it's a much better experience on the newest iPad Pro model. All right, so now we're going to move on to the final game, which is going to be Call of Duty Mobile. Then we're going to move on with our app launching test, our web browsing test, and things like that. So we open these both at the same time here. Let's see which one gets to the main screen first. As you can see, the 2020 iPad Pro did just by a couple of seconds. We are logged into 2 separate accounts on these guys as well, so we should not have any issues loading up at the same time. And as you guys can see, we have the same graphic settings on both devices. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and test out the 2020 iPad Pro first here on the right-hand side, and then move along to the left-hand side where we have the 2018 iPad Pro. All right, so some smooth gameplay here on the 2020 iPad Pro. Not a single frame drop, not a single lag, nothing at all. Everything ran super smooth, no choppiness at all. So we're gonna go ahead and test it out now on the 2018 iPad Pro. I'm gonna go ahead and hook my controller up to that. So just instantly going over to the 2018 iPad Pro, again, I could just see the choppiness. It just does not feel near as smooth. You could just see these very subtle movements in your character where it's just a little bit more choppy. It's like frames are dropping just a lot choppier than the 2020 iPad Pro is, which is actually very surprising to me. I did not think there would be a noticeable difference in gaming performance, at least not a big difference in the gaming performance, but there is a big difference, let me tell you, especially if you are a gamer on the iPad, if you like to play mobile games and you like to try really hard, you are definitely going to notice the difference from the 2018 and the 2020. So that's going to wrap it up for the gaming portion of this video. I definitely think there's a nice improvement in the 2020 iPad Pro over the 2018 iPad Pro. All right, so now we're going to move on to the app launching portion of this test. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Procreate, one of my favorite iPad apps, in 3, 2, 1. Press at the same time, and it looked like they both loaded that up instantly. So we're going to move on now to, let's move on to LumaFusion in 3, 2, 1. Let's see which one loads up LumaFusion first, and the 2020 iPad Pro just by about a second. Let's go into Notability, and that looked about even. Let's head into Amazon. Amazon looked like it loaded up first on the 2020 iPad Pro. Let's go into the App Store. And once again, the 2020 loaded up first. Let's go ahead into Twitter. Twitter, it looked like the 2020 iPad Pro loaded up first, and by a long margin actually here over the 2018. Let's go into Reddit. Press at the same time there, and it looks like the 2018 iPad Pro beat out the 2020 in Reddit. Let's try Twitch. Twitch looked like it loaded up first on the 2020, but that's because we were not logged in. Looked like it was going to be about the same if we were logged in. Now let's try YouTube. And YouTube's going to load up first on the 2020 iPad Pro by a pretty nice margin here. Pretty surprising. All right, so now we're going to do a 4K video exporting test. So we have the same 7-minute clip here on both devices. This is just me working on my car in the garage. We're going to go ahead and export this from LumaFusion as a movie to our camera roll. And you can see here, it's going to be about a 2.86 gigabyte file size that we are exporting. It's the same on both. So we're just going to go ahead and hit export at the same time and see which one can export this 4K video first. So 3, 2, 1, press at the same time here, and I will be back once one of these is close to finishing. So these two have been neck and neck the entire time. Really doesn't seem like there's a big difference between the two devices. The A12Z chip does not appear to export video or process video any faster than the A12X chip on the 2018 iPad Pro. And as you can see here, yes, so the 2020 did finish by literally like a second, 1 second earlier than the 2018 iPad Pro. So as far as video exporting, nothing to see here, nothing has changed. All right, so now let's go ahead and test out that additional 2 GB of RAM on the 2020 iPad Pro. So we have 6 GB of RAM here, 4 GB on the 2018 model. Let's go ahead and see if we get any relaunches with any of these games or applications. So let's start off with the first app we opened, which was PUBG. And it looks like we got a full relaunch on both. So even that 6 GB of RAM did not prevent a relaunch there. Let's see Fortnite, if we get a full relaunch, no. So Fortnite, not a full relaunch on either. Let's go ahead into Twitch. So nothing on Twitch. Do Reddit, nothing on Reddit. So RAM is looking really strong on both of these devices. Let's do Procreate. And Procreate looked like there was a little bit of a delay on the 2018 iPad Pro here. Let's go into Call of Duty Mobile. And Call of Duty Mobile had a full relaunch on the 2018, whereas it just went back to the main screen on the 2020. So definitely a nice win there for the 2020 iPad Pro. Let's go into YouTube. And once again, a full relaunch on the 2018 and not on the 2020. So it's looking like that additional 2 GB of RAM is actually making a difference in real world usage when we're going to reopen some of these applications. Same with Twitter. Once again, relaunch on the 2018, not on the 2020. This 2020 iPad Pro, again, with the App Store. So big difference here in RAM management with a big win going, and again with Amazon, a big win going to the 2020 iPad Pro. So now we're gonna run a Wi-Fi speed test. So the 2020 iPad Pro has Wi-Fi 6 support, whereas the 2018 does not. I don't have a Wi-Fi 6 router, but we're gonna see if it's any faster on the 2020 iPad Pro. So you can see there, we got the speed 94 down, 55 up on the 2018. Let's see if that's any faster on the 2020. And yes, our speeds are definitely faster on the 2020 iPad Pro. So we got a 113 down and about a 52 up. It was hovering around 90 upload, and then it went down at the end there to 52, but it looks like we do have a little bit faster speeds on the 2020 iPad Pro as expected. And of course, if you do have a Wi-Fi 6 router, you'll notice a huge difference in speed. All right, so now let's go ahead and do a quick web browsing test. So we're gonna open up these same web pages and see which one loads first. Let's go to ESPN.com first, in 3, 2, 1. Press at the same time here, and it looked like about the same. I'm gonna go ahead and close these other tabs just so there's no difference in terms of speed. We're gonna go ahead and move on to another website. Let's go to TechCrunch in 3, 2, 1. And it looked like maybe the 2018 finished first. Pretty interesting result there. Let's go ahead to Product Hunt, 3, 2, 1. And that looked like the 2018 as well. So not sure what's going on here, but there's really not a big difference at all. It was kind of hard for me to even tell which one finished first. We'll just do something for fun. We'll just go to Samsung.com and 3, 2, 1. And it looks like the 2020 actually won first. I was looking at the loading bar up there. So it looked like the 2020 loaded up Samsung first, but really not a difference at all in terms of web browsing. And then finally, I just wanted to run a quick Geekbench test just because a lot of people always ask me about this and I never usually run them. But you can see the specs right here. Again, 4 GB of RAM compared to 6 GB. We're gonna go ahead to the CPU benchmark here and run it, and I will be back with the scores once it has finished. All right, so you can see there it finished up first on the 2020 iPad Pro just by like a second or two, and you can see the single core score is exactly the same on both, and the multi-core score actually scores higher on the 2018 iPad Pro, which is very, very interesting. But once again, this is another example of the benchmark numbers really meaning nothing at all, because the 2020 iPad Pro is clearly faster, and especially when it comes to gaming and the GPU. But when it comes to the Geekbench tests, you can see here that the 2018, if you're just looking at numbers, appears to be faster. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is an in-depth speed comparison between the 2018 iPad Pro and the 2020 iPad Pro. I think there's a much bigger difference than people realize, especially when it comes to the gaming, the GPU, and also RAM management. That additional 2 GB of RAM proved to be a big difference when it came to loading applications and keeping applications open in the background, as well as Wi-Fi. You're gonna notice faster Wi-Fi, and if you get the cellular model, you will notice faster LTE speeds as well on the 2020 compared to the 2018. Of course, when it comes to just opening up applications, you're not gonna notice the difference. video exporting, not a big difference. Your boot up and boot down, not a big difference. But when it comes to the important things, like I said, like gaming and RAM management, you will definitely notice a difference. Now, I don't want you guys to get my words twisted, or for you 2018 iPad Pro users to start getting worried, because the 2018 iPad Pro is still an absolute beast. It's going to be faster than any other iPad, any other iPhone on the market aside from this brand new 2020 version. So I don't want you thinking I'm saying the iPad Pro 2018 is slow, because it's not. It games much better than any other iPad or iPhone you can get on the market right now. So I just wanted to clear that up. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, I would appreciate if you give this video a thumbs up, and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't done so already for a lot more comparisons like this one. But anyways, thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon.